Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Jesse. There's been a couple of issues we ran into over the last 2-3 weeks, and I just want to share some of those issues that we're fighting through and struggling through right now. So first issue, right, it's 21 January of 2024, and it has been cold, and you can't do long stints of hours of work out in a something teen degrees garage. It is just cold. So I get an hour or two out there. I have to come in and warm up a little bit, go back out for another hour or two, and it's tedious process. The other issue is we ran into an issue with the way that we were going to do the timing on this Jaguar. So the original plan was to use 160 tooth sensor in the back and a 1 tooth sensor in the front, and we're going to set MS3 up to use a something plus 1 tooth trigger wheel setup, which is native to the MS3. You can do that, but it turns out that MS3 does not like the large number of wheels, so the 160 tooth that we're using. It needs to be an integer of the number of cylinders, right? So I could not find anywhere where it really described how to set this up anywhere very well, and even in the documentation when you read through it, it says it's not really documented very well. That's the issue that we ran into. So we got a couple of options we can do to try to correct this situation. We can either go get a flywheel with a 12 times something number of teeth, right? And then you'd have to get the flywheel that's associated with that. And if you look around, you can find one or two here and there, but we've also got the 4L60E transmission behind it, which means we have to have it custom machined, rebalanced. Then we have to get the starter, and it becomes very expensive and very time consuming to do something like that. So I think at this point what we're going to do is we're going to go use the more traditional trigger wheel setup of a 36-1. And unfortunately for this project, I shouldn't say nobody, there is a company that I found out in Norway that does make an EFI system, and they do make custom trigger wheels exactly for the Jaguar V12 with the sensor in the factory location. But they don't sell the trigger wheel without selling you the EFI kit. So I contacted them. I'm sure they're great guys, and I totally get why they sell only the kit and not the trigger wheel. It is a custom piece they make by hand for every kit that they sell. So I get it. But so what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to try to figure out a way to build this here in the garage with a hacksaw and a welder, right? So that's what we got. It's gonna be a good time, yeah. Hopefully it turns out and works good enough, right? It's gonna be fun. Not really, but that's where we're at with the project. We do have the MS3 talking to the computer. I'll go through a little bit here and show you some of the settings that we have that we're going to use for the initial startup, and then eventually we're going to have to tune it and make sure everything's working great. And there was one other thing, and I'll explain that here as we're going through the setup. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of run the program offline and just kind of look at some of my settings and show you one or two of things I had to do in the last 2-3 weeks to get some stuff figured out. So I'm the weirdo that uses Linux. If you're using Linux, ignore this little thing. If you're using Linux, there's a couple things you got to do. So my system, I had to turn on this Xhost thing to get it to communicate with the Java code correctly. And then you do have to run the program as the root user so you can communicate with the MS3. So don't forget to make sure that you run as root. And then you'll be able to start the computer. You'll be able to start the program. It'll come up here in a second. But once it comes up, if you were actually in the vehicle, you could turn it on and communicate, but we're not doing that today. I did purchase the license for the advanced version of Tuner Studio, so we could have a few extra little things to look at and play with and tune. So so it was only about 120 bucks for the package that came with the to get the registration license for Megalog Viewer and Tuner Studio Ultra version, so we can get those extra tuning capabilities in there. But that's fine. It's not a lot of money. It's nice to have the extra ability to tune some other things. All right, so we are not connected with the project, so we're not going to see any readings that make any sense, but that's fine. So I just spent over the last few weeks just kind of coming in here, setting my initial settings, right? Like number of injectors, there's 6 injectors, even fire, so we'll do 12. It's 5.3 liter injector sizes. We're using 210 cc's. We're set for A, B, C, D, E, F, so 6 coils that will operate in a batch fired setup, and just go through and do all your different settings. You know, this is what you're gonna have to do for, you know, anybody. I'm just using some base maps right now, nothing exciting. You know, just over the last 2 weeks, just been going in, checking these things. So nothing really exciting going on here. Right, go in, you set your cranking and RPM and your number of revolutions you need and all that jazz. And we also have CAN 1, which is the trans controller, right? So we can set that up. We got the 4L60E. We're using the Megasquirt version 3 setup. You know, you can go in and you can look at shift curves and all that fun stuff. So that's what we've really been doing the last couple of weeks, is just kind of setting all this stuff up, getting everything into here's your lockup settings, right? So you can turn your lockup on when you want to, you know, whatever, all that stuff. There's lots of options in here. You got to go in, you got to adjust everything, you got to make sure all your things are set up right. We won't have alternator control right offline again. Just, you know, just go in, play with this stuff. You don't have any knock sensors, but, you know, here's your cold advanced, you know, and things like that. Just set everything up. Nothing really super exciting. So one thing we did have to change on this project is in the transmission controller setup. We talked about using a auto and manual mode of operation for this, and we're gonna have a little switch that will get us into gear shifting. So that is, where was it? Shift settings, here we go. So that was in shift settings, where you have manual selectable and the switch input. There's only a few options to select from. I was under the assumption that there would be more options based on the fact that this is communicating with the CAN bus. So the original trigger we were using, we were going to use the table switch for this. And so we had to rewire a little bit to get it into the flex switch now. So that's the only change that we have to do for the wiring for the trans setup. All right, well, that's it, guys. Kind of a short, boring video, I know, but that's where we're at right now. Just some issues that we got to work through and fix Try to get this thing back on track in the next 2-3 weeks, based on how long it takes to build this trigger wheel. That's the real issue. We are also in the middle of building the exhaust, so there's that going on, and just lots of little things to do. Once we get it up and running, we'll get the car back together, and my goal is to still have this on the road sometime in March. So let's see if we can't just once this weather warms up, get back at it and just keep pushing hard.